Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Wings channel, and I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of November 21st through the 27th, and main feature of the week is a very, very powerful new moon at 2 degrees Sagittarius, and we'll get into that soon, but Mercury and Venus also moving together and some other stuff. But first, I just wanted to first off, remind you all, if you're not familiar with astrological terms, do not get lost on the language of the astrology. Most of what I'm saying is actually the interpretations of the language. So people get hooked up on like me saying something like Mercury into Sag and don't hear what I'm about to say afterwards, which is the important part. So that's, unless you're familiar with astrology, and I know a lot of you are and want to know why I'm saying this stuff, and that's why I will mention the astrology, but don't get caught up in that and miss the message, is my point. So the one thing I wanted to mention first, I want to just kind of more continuing observations of Mars retrograde. And, since it went retrograde right at the end of October, and like I told you guys, it's going to be retrograde until mid-January, and very, like I said, very similar in many ways to Mercury retrograde, where a lot of our actions just don't turn out the way we expect them to be, and it can be a very frustrating period. Fortunately, only comes up every 2.5 years, approximately, so it's not like Mercury retrograde every 3 months or so coming in, but it is longer, of course. So that energy is really saturated into what's going on now, and it can feel like a lot of things going on, or that we normally do may not be making headway. And remember, Mars is in Gemini too, and I talked about this in more detail, but just some observations. So we went through the election in the United States, and note 2 houses that make up the legislative branch, Mars in Gemini, dualistic sign. What happened when it was retrograde? One house went to one party, the other house went to the other party. The indecisiveness of people not being sure what to do or where to go at this point. The Mars in Gemini, all that information, and knowing inside that most of it's mis or disinformation coming from both sides. So almost like an indecisiveness of the voters to be willing to give either side the majority, so that they can really dictate policy completely. Now, what's interesting about that is it's like that indecisiveness goes back to Mars relating to the head, and usually being very headstrong and knowing what it wants. So here in Gemini, it's like maybe from all the information and the duality of the Gemini energy, it's not sure what to do. And I think on strictly a political level, I think what happened here too was that the courts, in ruling in favor of a lot of the Republican agenda on actually abortion, on women's reproductive rights, kind of messed up this election for them. It brought people to that breaking point of just not being clear who was on their side anymore. When we talk about the Sagittarian energy that kicks in this time of the year, people really do value their individualistic freedom. So when they're being told by someone who's Jupiterian, moral people, trying to push their own morals, and courts also ruled by Jupiter, then the reaction was not it played into the Mars retrograde in Gemini and really watered down what happened. So very interesting. And I think, and then remember too, just this past weekend, Mars had its second square to Neptune during this retrograde period, which also completely diffuses and confuses the energy. So we can see, once again, how this is playing out. It's like right now people are unclear what to do or how to decide on things because things are not working out they normally do. And you may see that happening in your life too for the next couple months. So we all just need to almost look at it as an extended Mercury retrograde period. And that's what we kind of almost need to expect, and therefore not get ourselves into some metaphysical misery about it internally, where it's just the energy that's out there. It's not your fault. It's the way it is for a little while, and we'll see where it all pans out. Okay, so 3 things this week. The sun goes into Sagittarius, also just like Mercury and Venus did, and that actually occurs on Monday. Yeah, Monday, I believe. Yes, it is. And then we have the new moon at 2 degrees Sag, so at a critical beginning degree, and it's a beginning moon, and energy, the new moon, and has no other exact aspects except the conjunction. So it's a very pure energy. It's not really stained by other planets getting involved. And Jupiter, which happens to be the ruler of the new moon, is going direct on that very day in the new moon too. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is Mercury and Venus are, traveling together in Sag. They're actually conjunct on Monday, and then they'll trine Chiron together this week. And at the end of the week, next weekend, they're going to quincunx actually Uranus together. So those are the 3 things we're going to talk about. So Sun into Sag it's actually on Tuesday. I said Monday, but it's actually on Tuesday now that I'm looking here again. So Tuesday is when the sun goes into Sagittarius, and that's the last third of autumn in the northern hemisphere and the last third of spring down in the southern hemisphere. And once again, just like Mercury and Venus going into Sag, people, when Sag energy is all about having the ability to move forward. And when the sun goes into Sag, it wants an adventure. It wants freedom, it wants independence, and it wants to gain new knowledge while it's doing that. And it does not want emotional attachment or any other kind of restriction holding it back, and will actually kind of almost flip that off and move forward anyway. So it's really into giving and receiving freedom within all contexts, and it doesn't, it likes to relate to others and stuff. Sag is a very expansive sign, and it really will take information, especially from anyone who's very different from your background, from your culture, from the way you were brought up. They can bring in a lot of new knowledge and wisdom to you, and you want that. That people want that. They want to expand to their knowledge base. They're very tolerant of others as long as they don't tie them down. The other thing is that's a little bit dangerous, and I mentioned it with the Mercury in Sag because Mercury is traditionally weak in Sag. Sag has at times details are part of the thing that it considers a restriction. So it can really frown and get careless about details, and it's very subjective too. So it's almost not only careless about it, but also self-righteous about being the way it is, for its own personal freedom. So just what that can kind of do at times is drive people off from you, like, because you come across as like kind of arrogant or something. But it also, can jump to conclusions at times too. It can be impulsive about things. It's really into mental stimulation that helps it change its values, adjust its philosophies, things like that. And many times that has to do with the law, it has to do with medicine, it has to do with like foreign exposure through travel or other people and other cultures. But it's all about gaining secondary knowledge. So anything that you're interested in, that you're gaining more information from, will fall into that too. And so then, right on Wednesday, as the sun goes into Sag on Tuesday, says that, in between 0 and 1 degree, says that 1 degree the next day gets over to 2 degrees Sag as the sun moves a degree a day, and that's where the moon is. So the moon and sun are conjunct, which means we have a new moon at 2 degrees Sag. And what's interesting about this new moon, there's really no other exact aspect, so it makes it a very pure energy. And remember, a new moon cycle lasts a month. So what I like, the word that comes to me about this new moon is it can be a talisman. It can be a marker of change. It is a very potent new moon. I cannot express to you guys enough. There's 4 energies that come into this new moon that if you start something new now, that's what you need to do with this new moon. It can really bring expansion and growth through the future for a long time. And so this new moon is a very potent one. It's at a critical degree. It's at only 2 degrees. The first 3 degrees of the sign, very potent energy. What's planted there can last a long time. It can last up close to 30 years possibly, of bringing its energy in, and the new moon, of course, is always a potent time of the month to start anything new. But we have it in this critical degree, and it's in Sagittarius, which is all about a new adventure, bringing something new into our lives that expands our world on all levels. It brings in personal growth. It brings in beneficial energy. And what's even more interesting, there's no aspects otherwise to other planets. So this is pure. This is pure energy. And if anything, Mercury and Venus and Sag are going to support this energy with their energy too, because they're in the same sign. But even more so, that's what I mean. This is such a potent new moon. It's got me, I can just feel the energy surging from it, just talking about it. Is that Jupiter, the ruler of the new moon, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius, is going direct on that day when it's in its most powerful, influential positions. And Jupiter's all about expansion, just like Sag. That's why it rules Sag. So totally powerful new moon cycle this next 30 days. Do things that you want to do for the future, projects, business, relationships, anything that you're looking at that can be for the future, that brings in expansion. It's going to adjust your life. It's going to fine-tune your values and philosophies of life. It's going to expose you to all kinds of new things, new people, new ideas, new information, new knowledge that all can be integrated into your wisdom within you and really, bring a push that can last for a long time into the future. So if you don't use this next month to do that, you've wasted an opportunity. It's a talismanic energy. It can change your life into a completely new adventure and direction. And so that Sag moon, what does it want? It wants that's what brings it the emotional satisfaction. is getting that adventure, getting that independence, getting that ability to move forward, and that just brings it like a lot of optimism, you know. And that was the other thing too. So not only is Jupiter going direct, like I told you guys a few weeks ago, right around the same time that Mars went retrograde, Jupiter was it's been retrograde for months now, slipped back into Pisces, which I told you guys was a really good thing. It got it out of Aries and back into Pisces where it's really strong. And it only is retrograded back to the 27th degree. So once again, it's at a critical degree too. So not only is the new moon at a critical degree, but Jupiter in Pisces is at critical degrees too, the last 3 degrees of Pisces, where we can really, you know, we really want to bring in what we believe in. And it can be a time, you know, Jupiter, it's funny because Pisces is a sign, once again, just like Gemini, we're talking about with Mars and Gemini, it's a dualistic sign. The fish swimming away from each other, they're connected at the tail, they don't realize that everything is together, but the whole thing that Pisces is that wants to find that out. And so in this critical degree, it can really bring in a lot of unifying energy. And Mercury and Venus conjunct one another is also bringing in a lot of unification energy. The problem with the, you know, the Jupiter in Pisces, going back to that, the problem with that is it still shows there's 2 sides to like everything. Like there's 2 different philosophies going on. So like what may happen in this period too is you may find out you have to separate from certain people who just are not like on that philosophical or value bend that you're on, and like bring in more people from the bend that you are on. So it's a very interesting duality kind of game going on there. And the danger, of course, of that is the continuation of these 2 sides, you know, being like, you know, self-righteous with one another and not being able to get together. So like they're both working on their own separate thing, but not unifying. And in the United States, you can go back to what I said in the beginning of this vlog where I was talking about the Mars retrograde affected the election. I really honestly feel like these next 2 years are good because of what happened in the 2 houses being split and not the strongest executive branch and a judicial branch that's under the influence of like political rather than being objective and detached. We're probably going to quagmire as a country. Pluto, remember, is also in its return in the U.S. chart. And Mars, I've mentioned this before over the years too, for about 10 years or so now, has been the progressed Mars in the United States chart has also been retrograde. So all this stuff shows the United States' internal problems have it so distracted from the outside world that we're losing our ability to influence the outside world. We're, you know, from the outside, other countries' standpoints, the United States has lost a lot of its power already in the last 10 or 15 years. And this will continue to make that so also. Like, it just is like one of these things where the energy is really, I think these next 2 years can be very, very damaging to the strength of the U.S. in the long run, like, because the world is still going to go on, and more likely than not, this is going to be just a stuck quagmire. So it's almost like the United States is like, with its Pluto return, is its own worst enemy, really. That's what's going on here. Like, we're hurting ourselves by being so divided, by not being able to come together and unify like that Pisces energy would really like us to do. So, you know, this can be an opportunity again to do that, but more likely than not, the Mars retrograde on a social scale, Jupiter, you know, which is a social planet, is probably going to be stuck in this game of duality since it is in Pisces when it when it went back direct, and Mars is in this retrograde position too, not only while it was going into Pisces, but also in the U.S.'s progressed chart. So, you know, it's not the best thing for the U.S., but I do think, you know, for the most part, for individuals, this is a very, very potent new moon that we can really start something new for ourselves that can last for a long time and can really bring a lot of change. Okay, I want to get to that Mercury Venus stuff too, so because I could keep going on this, but use it, you know, use it. So Monday, Mercury and Venus are conjunct in Sagittarius, and like I said, they're going to help out with that new moon too. Like, we can really get a lot of the expansion we need, even though our actions are kind of blocked right now. The Mars part of our life, you know, Mercury and Venus together are working really well and will help with this new moon, and we can get a lot of the information we need through communicating. We can get like new information that, you know, adds to our education or knowledge base, and also like good for business too, like business relationships, starting up, that kind of thing, shared kind of experiences, and then also like Mercury and Venus together help unify too. So it can help, you know, people see like patterns that bring things together, and they're able to articulate their emotions in an intellectual way that doesn't get so subjectively tied up that it's triggering other people. It's really actually very poetic in a way, where the way we can express our emotions when these two are together. So, you know, these relationships can really be helpful, and communications can be really helpful during this Mars retro period, and will help boost this new moon. You know, that's what it's saying. A lot of this new information, a lot of this expansion, a lot of the things that opportunities that you're going to get will likely come from information you collect via communications, through business opportunities, through educational opportunities, and through the benefits that others bring you, you know, especially when you can have this unifying energy and be articulate with your words and communicate well with what you want to say. What's interesting too, as the week goes on, they trine Chiron together midweek, which is just beautiful. Now, what's interesting about that, though, at the same exact time, it's squaring Juno, which is they're both squaring Juno, which is the asteroid of partnerships. Now, first of all, the Mercury with the Venus and Chiron is a very healing kind of energy. This is people like bringing like healing energy to one another through their words, through their, you know, ways of relating to one another, through the information they bring one another. Like we learn from one another, and we have a very curious, open, tolerant mind about things, and we want to take more in, and we have soothing words for one another. So it's an opportunity to learn a lot, and to be able to give back and teach others, and by doing that, like, bring healing to ourselves and others. Now, the interesting thing with the square to Juno is that where that part of that thing I was talking about with the Jupiter and Pisces having to decide maybe who it can go with and who it needs to let go of, that may come into play with this too, where maybe there's partnership issues that, you know, this can bring a healing energy to, or make us realize, oh, the best way to get healing in this is more separation. So very interesting energy there. And then on next weekend, they both quincunx Uranus, which first it's Mercury on Sunday, and then Venus actually is Monday of next week when it actually gets, but they're both pretty still close together. And, you know, and so like the Mercury Uranus it can be brilliant, but it's edgy. You can really see a lot of new solutions, like things come at you that you quite hadn't seen the way they lined up and perceived it that way before. So like you can find a lot of new solutions to maybe old problems or things like that but there's also the mind is very jumpy and undisciplined and edgy too. It's like kind of like desiring change, and will kind of force it by even like being irritable or something, like, kind of like rocking the boat energy on purpose. But what it does is it brings up this kind of like edgy, nervous energy. But the mind is very ingenious, but we can really tatter our nervous system when we're like that. And then with Venus, it's very interesting when it comes to Venus, because this is one of these Sag kind of dilemmas with this Venus quincunx Uranus. Venus and Sag too, quincunx and Uranus. The dilemma with that aspect is like the desire to have freedom in relationships, but still want relationships. But it's kind of like an uncommitted energy. And it can be very impulsive in its relationship decisions, which can make it regretful quick, because you can get yourself involved in like, chaotic situations with others by, not really thinking things through and making what might be the best decision for yourself. And, and it can also make us like, like even in our, it can make us, irresponsible in our in relationships that we normally are requiring some kind of responsibility. So it's very interesting there, and it's like got an edginess too that can be put into creative energy, but it comes out in very odd ways too. And also being careful with money during that period too, because people can be very impulsive with money and then realize they probably shouldn't have been pretty quickly afterwards. So an interesting journey for Mercury and Venus this week too. All right, well, that's what I got for this week. The Astrological Winds channel is a blog I do every week. I put it on YouTube. Definitely put a lot of work into it. I love to share the energy with you guys. It is a free service, and if you could pass the link on to somebody else when you're done now, that would be a great way to pay me back for the service. If you'd like to send in a donation, which some people do occasionally, you're more than welcome to do that too. There's no amount that's too small, and my Venmo handle is the symbol at, the A with the circle in it, and then a capital M for Matthew, the full name Matthew with 2 T's, so it's MATTHEW, and then there's a hyphen or a dash in the middle. And then my last name, which is Lawton, L-A-U-T-E-N, so capital L-A-U-T-E-N. The other way you guys can support me is if you need a reading. I'm always available for them. Highly recommend that you have a natal chart reading if you've never had it done, or if you're not really clear about the ones you have had done. Knowing the energy in your life, it's like if you don't, it's like kind of like being in the car and not knowing which direction you're going in. So I really highly recommend having that done, so that you can steer your life better and know the energies that are behind a lot of the things that you do. And then also every year I recommend a predictive reading right around your birthday when you have a new solar return chart. It's like your own personal weather report, just like I do on this blog every week, but it's just for you. And so yeah, those are the ones I really recommend for individuals. If you're in a new relationship or even an old relationship, you want to have a relationship analysis done. That's something. If you have a child, like to look at the first 20 years of a child's life, important events, and how to handle your child by looking at their chart. I do children's readings too, and then also I do elections. If you're interested in the timing, getting the best timing for an event, like launching a business or a wedding, something like that, important events where you really want the universe's energies to be in your favor, And then horror stuff, if you've got a burning emotional question that you just can't seem to get the answer to. Sometimes we can look at a chart and find it. For people who are really like, a deeper spiritual purpose in their lives, fixed star readings are a way of looking at, you know, kind of more of a soul purpose. So, and then relocation. A lot of people like that service too, astrocartography, looking to move to a new place. We can take a look at that, or looking at places in the world where certain energies would come in. So all kinds of services. I also have beginning classes available on Dropbox. Had a couple people have been asking about that lately. Like I've said before, they're $25 a class, or $20 if you're a student with an ID. There's 5 up on Dropbox now, beginners. If you want to get all 5, and if you're not even a student at once, you can get all 5 for $100. And then also I am available for lectures, classes, mini readings at your event, or question and answer, open question and answer sessions kind of thing. All those things, if you want or are interested in, please get in touch with me through my email. It's the best way, and that's matthue823@gmail.com. So it's matthue823@gmail.com. Remember too, the blog, although it's on YouTube, and if you do have a YouTube account, become a follower and turn your notifications on. You'll always know when it's on. But it's also available on podcasts. And I know, like, I get anywhere, there's more and more people using the podcast, so you don't really have to see me. And it's an easier way to hear it sometimes, maybe when you're doing something else, like driving or jogging or riding your bike or walking your dog or whatever it may be. You know, so just go to your favorite podcast, look up the Astrological Winds channel, and if that one doesn't have it, just try the next one. It goes out through Buzzsprout to about 20 different ones, Spotify, Apple iPodcast, Reveal, I know, are 3 that definitely pick it up. I also post the link on Instagram. So if you have an Instagram account, look up Astrological Winds channel. I also sometimes post extra material during the week in there that's just comments. It's not anything video or audio, so it's really quick and easy to look at. And then also the one other place I do post the link is on Facebook. My Facebook account is private, so you do have to friend me and ask for a friend request first. But remember, I do use it mainly for astrology, guys. I don't really use it much for much else. But it is Matthew, you know, like once again, capital M with 2 T's, Matthew Lauten, Lauten. Just you can friend me on that, and that's another place I post it. And you know, I'll probably start doing some new stuff soon too, so I'll let you guys know about that. Otherwise, so really potent time, really potent week, really potent month. I can't stress it enough, like how positive that energy can be for you in the future. You know, I mean, a lot of times astrology, you know, the message may not come across as the most, you know, positive one, especially the way humans judge things. Astrology doesn't have judgment itself. And remember, with that new moon too, in your personal life, look where 2 degrees Sag is in your chart. That's the house that is most potent and ready to take on that new moon energy. All right, next week I'll probably not only do the weekly, I'll probably take a look at December, the first look for December too. So tune in for that next week. I'll see y'all then.